Hi, Intro Geometry. Today's lesson deals with proportions. This is another topic that you're probably very familiar with, and we have done it a little bit throughout the year. This is the note packet that you'll need for today's lesson. So our last lesson was on ratios. When you write a proportion, what you're doing is setting two ratios equal to each other. We have different variations of what a proportion might look like. The first is a horizontal version where we're comparing A and B, and that's equal to C and D. We'll practice some of these later on through the lesson, but a better format is to have them set up in a vertical fashion. So you have your ratio A to B, and that equals the ratio C to D. We're using 4 different variables to imply that we have 4 different numbers. But again, when you reduce both ratios, they should be the same ratio. When you solve a proportion, we technically cross multiply. That's what we've been telling you all these years. But in geometry, we have a formal property. It's called the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. Again, it's just a formal way of saying cross multiply. So this is the original format for a proportion that we saw on our last slide. The means occupy positions 2 and 3. So the red arrows are pointing at B and C, and we're going to multiply that. So the product of the means. The extremes occupy positions 1 and 4. The yellow arrows are pointing at them, and we're also going to multiply A times D. So the product of B and C will be equal to the product of A and D. And what that will do is give us an equation in a horizontal format that you're used to solving. When you set up your proportion, there are many varieties that will actually work. What we tell you is to keep the like items together. So if A represents cookies, C will represent cookies. And then B might be per person. So 2 cookies per person, that means D has to represent people. So if I write my proportion in this box format here, it doesn't mean that you couldn't write yours flipped upside down. You're still keeping people on top and cookies together on the bottom. But again, there are other versions, so maybe you decide to compare it this way. Cookies at A and people at B, but then back to cookies at C and people at D. So if you look at every single one of these, when you cross multiply, A is multiplied by D and B is multiplied by C. So all 3 versions are technically correct and will give you the same answer. So let's start with our first example. We have a variable in the denominator. When I cross multiply, I usually draw my butterfly wings around the variable section first. So we're going to multiply 88 times x, and obviously that'll give us 88x. And then I'm going to cross multiply 52 times 64, and that will give us 3,328. At this point, this is a simple equation that you can solve. We're going to divide both sides by 88. And we get a value for x. You should know that answers to proportions are not typically nice, pretty integers. They're usually some kind of fraction or decimal. So no, you should round it however you're told to round it. Or if there's no specific instructions, you can leave the full decimal if you like. We have the same setup in the next example. X is in the numerator. I'm going to start my cross multiplying with 21 times x. And then I'll multiply the other side, 99 times 43. So you can see now my nice one-step equation that results. We're going to divide both sides by 21. And we get an answer of 202.714. And again, I didn't round it any specific way. I just left whatever the calculator display gave me. Remember, you can stop the recording at any time to try examples on your own if you like. In this example, we don't have just an x in the numerator, we actually have a quantity. We need to be careful with these. I'm still going to start the cross multiplying process where the variable is located, so I've circled what I want to multiply. When you put this in a horizontal format, you need to use grouping symbols. So x plus 58 needs to go with parentheses. Otherwise, we're going to have a mistake in our equation. Then we can go ahead and multiply 6 times 40. And now I'm going to distribute the 65 to both the x and the 58, and I'm going to multiply 6 times 40. So this is a two-step equation. We're going to subtract off 3,770, and that will leave me with a negative value on the right. This is okay. Values of x could be negative to show that we have equal ratios. And ultimately, we're going to divide by 65, and we have a negative answer that I've left unrounded. We're going to try another one like that, except now it's in the horizontal format. This is not a friendly format, and it's confusing to most. So what we're going to do is we're going to decide which items to pair up. Because 26 is listed first on the left and D is listed first on the right, that's going to be my first ratio. 26 is to D. And then when I set up the second side, I'm going to use the items that were listed second, 28 and the quantity of D minus 32. Same thing here. I'm going to start cross multiplying where I find the variable, but I need to use grouping symbols. So they're the quantity of D minus 32. And now I'll distribute. I'm going to subtract 26D. That seems to be the easiest step right now. And I'll have 2D, and then I'm going to divide both sides by D. And again, I have an answer that's negative, and that's okay. When you sub it in, you're going to see that each ratio will reduce to the same value or will have the same decimal equivalent. That's it for proportions today. This is homework number 97. You'll find that in your packet. Make sure when you're solving the proportions in the section where it starts with problem number 5 that you do show your work. You can show it on the back or you can put it on a separate piece of paper. If you have any questions when you're going through your homework, please, you can call me at home between 8 and 3. You can call me on my cell or text me, or you can send me an email and I'll answer any questions that you have. Have a great day.